Christina Hoff Sommers is a brilliant, articulate woman who's been on a well-publicized tear through the insanity and hypocrisy of third-wave feminism. But here's the question. Is Christina Hoff Sommers an advocate for the rights of all human beings, including men? Or is she just another crypto-misandric, privilege-seeking gender parasite using a different twist on sexual politics to ensure that men's issues and rights are ignored for the benefit of women? That's coming up on The Fatuous Feminist. Anti-feminism is on the rise. This is generally good news to the men's rights movement. If you sense a but coming, there is one, and it's a big one. Just as many people conflate feminism, an ideology, with women, one of the two human sexes, many people also conflate being anti-feminist with being supportive of men's issues. That should be obvious. Take Rush Limbaugh, for instance. He is credited with coining the term feminazi. Does anyone really imagine he supports men's rights or cares at all about many of the ignored issues faced by men and boys? Far from it. Rush is a classic gynocentrist who has never had a problem throwing men under the bus depending on their political views. But how does he measure up compared to someone like Sommers? In my analysis, he is far less harmful, or at the very least, where he really stands is much more obvious. He has few fans in the men's rights community. Sommers, on the other hand, has gained widespread admiration with men's rights proponents, the only voice that men's issues have. We have hosted a number of her videos on ABFM. We republished one of our articles. I personally read her books and referenced them in my writing. She is lauded widely as an equity as opposed to gender feminist. Yet when I take a closer look at her rhetoric, what I see reduces to horseshit any claim of her being an equity feminist. A feminist, yes, just one that delivers the gynocentric message with more subtlety and finesse than her associates on Tumblr. Let's start with a look at her own words when she explains why she still holds on to the feminist label despite being at apparently constant odds with the feminist establishment.
Well, I became a feminist in high school back in the last millennium. I grew up with a style of feminism that has nothing to do with what passes for feminism today. It wasn't about denigrating men or fixating on victimhood. It was about being a free, responsible, self-determining being. And in my writings, I call that style of feminism equity feminism.
In other words, Sommers is informing us that she was a part of the second wave, the branch of feminism dedicated to real equality and not about hating men. I'm sorry, but either the dishonesty or the sheer obtuseness of that is absolutely stunning. I won't squander time in this video with a direct reading, but I will link you to a list of quotes in the low bar from the most prominent and definitive feminist leaders of the second wave. From Steinem, McKinnon, Greer, Cummins, Daley, Dworkin, Jeffries, and others, we see a collection of the most vile, violently misandric ideas imaginable, all from the stellar feminist thought leaders of their day. Was Sommers part of a well-insulated and covert group of egalitarians who never saw the feminist scholarship of the times? Were these supposed equity feminists unaware that man-hating was an honorable political act or that a woman needs a man like a fish needs a bicycle? Is she seriously unaware that the mentality and the works of her sisterhood of the past translate now into social customs and law that we now see her so vociferously challenging? As I said, I have admired a lot of Sommers' work, but the feminism she claims to have been a part of never existed anywhere but in her imagination at best, at worst, in her simple willingness to revise. As I examine the undercurrent of women first sentiment in her current rhetoric, I just see someone very shrewdly playing both sides of the fence. Let's take a look at one of the ways she justifies the supposed need for modern feminism.
And despite women's immense progress in the U.S., the poverty rolls are still disproportionately filled with women and children. So I think the unique circumstances of women require special attention and sometimes protection.
This, like alleged patriarchy, the alleged wage gap, and alleged rape culture, is another bit of gynocentric claptrap that depends on willful ignorance to take seriously. Any legitimate discussion of poverty in the sexes demands recognition that the vast majority of the destitute and homeless, those at most risk and peril from poverty, are male. Sommers blithely ignores the fact that women eligible for multiple government programs like welfare, Section 8 housing, WIC, and other subsidies do not have that income counted in determining their economic status. Nor do their revenues from child support or alimony factor in to whether they are determined to be under the poverty line. Sommers' concerns over poverty are limited to women with roofs over their heads, sufficient food, clothing, medical care, and subsidized daycare, yet are considered below the poverty line. Meanwhile, a man who has a large portion of his income garnished for child support, alimony, or both is not allowed to have that lost income play a role in determining whether he is impoverished and therefore eligible for state support. Thanks to this very mentality, many men are a part of the invisible poor. Sommers saying that despite women's immense progress in the U.S., the poverty rolls are still disproportionately filled with women and children is a patently feminist-style factoid devoid of any real meaningful examination. Like the enforcement of our domestic violence laws, it relies solely on a callous indifference to the experience of men and a willingness to elevate the issues of women in a way that violates human decency. This is the feminism of Miss Sommers' youth, and it is the feminism of today. So what is Miss Sommers' true agenda? I think I can tell you, but it is better to at least start by allowing her that honor.
There's a fundamental social contract between men and women that must be observed in all civilized society, and we fought for centuries to achieve this.
There's a link to the complete video from that talk in the low bar. In it, she extols the importance of men knowing how to treat a woman like a lady, opening doors, serving as the brute strength and risk taker in a rigid sex role for the benefit of women and society. She even advocates manners training for both sexes combined with Take Back the Night rallies. She often writes book reviews on books promoting chivalry and a constricted notion of men's honor. You can put the word honor in scare quotes. It is clear that Sommers is of the camp that men are emotionally, psychologically, and socially inferior without the control of women. Or, as she said in a 2012 interview with The Atlantic, I quote, "If boys can get away with being boorish, they will, happily. Women will pay the price." Unquote. This, ironically, from the author of The War Against Boys, a book that I am reflecting on in a much different light than when I first read it. Over and over again, Sommers reveals herself to be someone protective of boys, not for their own sake, but for the sake of women as their beneficiaries. She wants boys trapped in a role of service to her ilk and feels threatened by anything that might let that particular cat out of the bag, including her beloved feminism. Sommers' true position is not new, nor is it new to other generation of feminists. The agenda is and always has been socializing chivalry into boys and expanding the rights of women, but only until it puts them on a collision course with the accompanying responsibilities. The following addresses that succinctly. Quote, What I contended and still contend is that the bulk of the advocates of women's rights are simply working not for equality, but for female ascendancy. It's all very well to say they repudiate chivalry. They are ready enough to invoke it politically when they want to get a law passed in their favor, while socially, to my certain knowledge, many of them claim it as a right every whit as much as the ordinary woman. E. Belfort Bax wrote that in 1887, 129 years ago. It is not my contention that Christina Sommers is to be faulted for her observations about feminism. If she wants to make light of college kids who think substandard sushi rice in their school cafeteria is deserving of a movement against cultural appropriation, she is witty and articulate enough to do a good job. I just don't want my admiration for the entertainment value she provides to cloud my perspective on what she is really saying about modern feminism or about men. Her message to women is simple. It's, hey, you idiots, watch what you're doing. If you continue to wantonly practice man-hating victim politics, eventually men will start giving you the equality you are only supposed to act like you want. If you don't lay off men, they will quit acting like the pack animals we need them to be. She even hands them a subtle tip with a change in heart about equity and all the chivalry-ending connotations that come with it.
And in my writings, I call that style of feminism equity feminism, or more recently, freedom feminism.
Ah, freedom. It's a wonderful thing. So cherished that men die to provide it for women. Now that is a feminism that I'm sure a lot of feminists can get behind. I hope you've enjoyed, and we'll see you next time.